speaking of wars, leading into our next topic with Mr. Powell and his final his final meeting as head chair or Fed chair is going to be in May, right? In a couple weeks here, and kind of most of us believe that we're kind of going to flatline, and he's going to say there's no interest rate cuts in the near future. Inflation is going up. It's higher than they were anticipating, not by a ton, by a little bit. But CPI is supposed to be at 3.5 right now. Core CPI, if you remove energy and food from that, is like at 2.5. Target of 2 is so much higher, which when inflation's high and you got the softening job market and some of those things that are adding to that inflationary time that we're in right now, that's not the time you cut rates. That's the time that rates raise and go up, right? I do think personally that they are going to, because energy is a big factor to that with the war going on with Iran and oil prices, that skyrocketing energy prices in that number. And so we've seen that portion of the measurement, really a lot higher than where it was a month and a half, 2 months ago, right? And so also food is affected by that because of the transportation costs and the gas prices in the trucks that have to bring it to us. And so those two things are pretty big numbers of pushing that CPI higher and higher than we want to see. And, as far as Jerome Powell and what he's going to probably indicate is that they're going to probably keep rates where they're at. They might hint at a rate increase. I doubt Powell is going to do that on his way out the door, because you're going to have somebody a lot more bullish than, or dovish, I guess they call it when it's talking about this, versus hawkish. And Jerome Powell's been a little bit hawkish with rates, rate cuts, all that stuff, saying, I don't think we're there. I think Jerome Powell has been late to a lot of stuff, but I think actually overall he's done a really good job as Fed chair. I actually don't think that he's done a horrible job, contrary to a lot of people have different opinions across the board. I think he's done a pretty, like, if I had to grade Jerome Powell and his what he's done, and I'm just looking at from overall real estate is what my lens of this is, I would say he's a little bit late, which is why I'd give him a little bit of a lower grade, but I would say a B plus. I don't think he's done a horrible job, despite what Trump is, calling him the last couple months. But he, I know that we'd like to see rates come down as an entrepreneur lending, and just business lending, real estate lending, all of that helps the economy. But we got to get inflation under control as well. And it's something we have to watch. And so I think that if you're just one of those, people with part of that $7.8 trillion sitting in money market funds waiting for rates to come down, you might still be waiting a little bit longer. Right. And I think that that's what this is saying, and what we would anticipate on his way out the door and the new chair coming in, it's probably going to be modest decreases, if that, and it might not. It's probably already baked into a lot of the mortgages that we're seeing out there, anyways. And so you might not get that big rate cut that you're waiting for, that you've been sitting on the sideline now for a year and a half waiting for, or longer, some of you, and missing out on really good deals that could be making you money. And so my advice is, interest rates, whether they're at 3% or whether they're at 8%, when you underwrite your deals, the deal has to support the debt service. What doesn't matter where it's at, right? So at the end of the day, quit focusing on the rate and start focusing on the deals. And now, do higher rates affect the cash flow and the investability of a deal? Absolutely. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a number on your underwriting sheet and on your analysis sheet to say, does this work, and can this property and this market support that debt service? And I think more and more needs to be talked about that than focusing on exactly where the rates are at any given time. It doesn't really matter, right? Lock it in. If the property can support it, great. And if you can get better in the future, refinance it. If the property can't support it, don't bank on it coming down. Like, you have to say no to it, right? Anything to add to that, Josh, as far as your opinions on the rates and where they're at?
Yeah, I mean, we're always taught, marry the property, date the rate. right? If you're getting into a DSCR type product, it's got a 5-year step down, a 3-year step down. You're penciling that in. And you're saying, I'm riding this horse for the next 3 years, the next 5 years. I'm aware of that. And my underwriting covers, what I'm doing here. And then when I refi, because you have to understand is like with the rate stuff, the number of people that I've talked to outside of us, and they're like, oh, we're going to buy when the rates come down. I'm like, but that was a year ago, 2 years ago. And you could have had a property by now that you've already got function up, operational, making money, making memories for you and your family as a lifestyle asset. And you'll be in a better position 2 years back than you would today. And, when's the best time to buy real estate was yesterday. Yeah. Right. And obviously, if the numbers don't pencil out, don't buy that property. And I would say, we bought our first property, ironically, as a seller finance because at the time DSCR rates were like 10 or 11. You know what I mean? But we knew, I guess there we took a chance. We're like, we assumed they're not going to be at 11% for the next 3 years and refied back out of that product when it made sense for us. Right. Yeah. But in general, I saw those extreme swings in there. If you're waiting for COVID, rates again, I don't think you're going to see this again in our lifetime. Just my personal opinion. But I could be very wrong. That'd be great. But again, those rates drop, your prices go up. So you're paying that price one way or the other. The question is, do you want to start making money on it now, or do you just want to keep waiting and hoping that it's going to get better and that you're the only person that's going to jump back in the game when they get better? No, everyone's going to jump back in the game. And now competition goes up, prices go up. You're bidding a lot more, right? When you're the only one bidding on the property, you have a lot more fun.
It's way funner to buy right now. I'm not having to compete. I get to negotiate a little bit better. It's crazy to me when we underwrite deals, and we have an analysis and underwriting department that we help a lot of people. So we see thousands and thousands of deals. So understand that we see a lot of deals. And let's assume you had pre-COVID rates versus today's rates, and that's what you're waiting for. You will, we see people that say no to these deals that are waiting to save, maybe they have a 7% rate today and they had a 4% rate back then, and it was going to save them a whopping $600 or $700 a month, a big amount on a monthly payment. At the end of the day, they're saving $7 or $8 grand. And they're saying, no, I'm going to wait for that rate to come back. Probably is never going to come back. I agree with you. We're not going to see those rates come back. And so the realistic is they're waiting for a rate to come into the 5 range or so that's going to save them $200 a month. And so they say no to property because they want to save $2,400 a year on their payment versus a property that might, because of that, it's still, let's say this, we look at properties all the time, they're positive cash flow. Let's say it's only making you $1,000 a month. It makes you $12,000 a year. And so I'm a net positive $12,000 a year, even if I have to use some of that $2,400. If I refinance, I could make me an extra $15,000 a year instead of 12. But I wait for 3 years. So I give up on the cash flow for 3 years. I give up the appreciation for 3 years. I give up the note pay down for 3 years. And right now, for many of you listening that are sitting on the sidelines, you're giving up a massive tax advantage that's going to save you a significant amount of money in your pocket, many times up to about 10% of the deal. And so if you're putting 10% down, it's basically covering your whole down payment on a cash flowing property. And you're sitting there waiting on the sidelines because you want to save $300 a month when the rate comes down. And I think that it's a massive mistake that a lot of people are making, and not that it is what it is. It's the name of the game, and it's the name of real estate investing. I'm not going to convince anybody on this podcast because I haven't convinced them yet. Because that number, I think a year ago was $7.2 trillion sitting on the sideline. Now it's at 7.8, and so maybe I'm making the case for people sitting money in the sideline. Maybe I'm a really bad sales guy on this, but. But at the end of the day, those of you that are in the game understand that's what you're doing. You're focusing on a small part of a deal. The deal has to cover that debt service. The deal has to cover those higher rates. But if it can, don't give up on quality assets and quality areas that produce money and put money in your pocket every single year and save you massively on taxes. Let somebody else pay for these nice properties for you, along with some positive cash flow, because you're worried about an extra point or two on the interest rate, especially if the property can handle it and the market can handle it. So, okay, guys, we are going to, Jake just popped up. Projected to exceed $8 trillion in money market funds by the end of 2026. Wow, that just keeps going up. So crazy. All that is all that I look at that and say, what is the consumer sentiment out there. That means investor sentiment and consumers are wanting to sit on the sidelines. They're waiting. They're sitting there in wait and see mode. That's a massive amount of money in wait and see mode. Eventually, it gets dumped into markets, and real estate is one of the markets it will get dumped into. And those of us that own assets, when that money comes in, we're going to be really happy we got in when we did, and that we own these assets when that money starts dumping in.